So you guys, let's get right into it. You guys finally got a chance to see the rookies and the vets together. And as fans, you know, we kind of live vicariously through y'all. You guys get the insight and things like that. And the first thing that pops out to me, Kyle, is when I hear who participated and who didn't. And we heard that Tolbert and Washington was out. Obviously, Tyron went down again. Do you have a rundown or any more information on some of those non-participants in the first part of OTA?
Yeah, Mike McCarthy kind of touched on a couple of them yesterday, and specifically with Tyron Smith, that was probably the most concerning one. And it's not necessarily concerning in terms of his availability going into the offseason. It's just concerning, again, hearing his name on the injury report so early on, because it's become such a routine thing to hear Tyron Smith missing time. If it was any other player, it's not a concern. It's just the fact that, Tyron Smith had a bit of a back tightness is what Mike McCarthy called it during his press conference yesterday, because you come to the point in his career where it's like, okay, he's going to miss games. You want him to be as healthy as possible moving forward. So this is more of a safe precaution. It doesn't necessarily mean that's a sign of things to come, but it's kind of just disheartening to hear that Tyron Smith was on that list. As far as Jalen Tolbert and James Washington go, Washington is a little bit further out just because he did have a walking boot on, but it's nothing major. Apparently it's something that would come back, and he could potentially be in practice the next couple of weeks. And then Mike McCarthy said that he expects Jalen Tolbert to be ready to go next week as well. The only other player that was not participating due to either an injury or was working with the trainers was Carlos Watkins on the defensive line. That was the only other guy that had missed any time. And I know I get it when you're missing practices and you're seeing these players that you want to see play, especially at the wide receiver position where you are shorthanded, you are shortchanged without Michael Gallup in the fold, and of course without Amari Cooper at the top of that depth chart. Fans can get a little overwhelmed and say, hey, I want to see these guys play. It's unfortunate that they're not practicing in the early parts of OTAs, but that's exactly the point. It's the early part of OTAs. The Eagles aren't on the schedule tomorrow. I mean, we're not turning around and we're not playing the Eagles in week one or whatever, or we're not playing the Buccaneers in week one tomorrow. It doesn't really matter right now. Yeah, they're missing a practice. The biggest thing is get them ready for training camp.
Absolutely.
If they're missing training camp practices, that's when you can maybe get a little concerned. But even then, you're still in the preseason. So it's easy to get a little bit carried away, but I think for the most part, this team is healthy right now. They know the guys that they need to get back and fully ready, and that's Michael Gallup, Jabril Cox from the injuries that they sustained last year. But outside of that, nothing at the moment looks like it's going to trickle into a significant time missed.
Well, you touched on Tyron Smith, and Jerry kind of let us know after the training camp, after the draft, that they're not going to go out and go sign a veteran swing tackle. Okay. And for me, that I feel a little weird about it. But then you hear Tymer Smith is down again, and you're like, all right, well, here we go. But should we be saying, well, let's go? Because you indicated that Matt Waletzko was out there, and he looked pretty solid. Can you kind of dive in on Matt Waletzko and Tyler Smith that you said looked pretty decent out there?
Yeah, well, the reason why I said they look solid is because you can't say they had really a good or a bad practice, specifically because there's no pads on. I mean, there's no physicality to it. The defensive linemen are able to go past these guys. You're looking, at this point in practice, you're looking for footwork, you're looking for movement, you're looking for hand placement. You're not looking for the way that they hold on the blocks and their physicality. Even with that, I think both of those guys brought plenty of energy yesterday. So I did. I liked what I saw from both of those guys. But it's a little bit early to say, oh my gosh, they're standing out. They're pushing people back. They're holding their blocks and things like that, because they just simply don't have pads on, and they won't until the first couple weeks of training camp. So At least from what I saw, I was really impressed with Tyler Smith and what he brought from a movement standpoint. They were doing some drills off to the side, and you're looking for heavy hands, and that's pretty much what it was. And he was popping the pads, and by the pads I mean the ones that like the guys carry in front of them. The I guess padding, not necessarily like pads on the shoulder,
right,
but he was popping that padding as much, if not more, than Zach Martin was. And I was from the far side of the field, so I mean that sound traveled, and I heard it, and I looked up, and I was like, oh, that's 73 going through a rep. So there were a couple things there that you really enjoyed watching with him. And then with Waletzko, without Tyron Smith, he was the one that was kind of placed in that running with the ones, and he was one of those guys that rotated in. It doesn't mean he's the swing tackle at the moment.
right.
It doesn't mean that he's number 2 on the depth chart. However, him at least getting those reps and going with guys like a Connor McGovern or at least filling in for Tyron Smith are both good signs that he is trusted already this early in the process. He's not necessarily one of those guys that's going to have to work into a rotation. He may be one that is in the rotation at the moment, and that's even a step up than I think what we anticipated when we were watching his college tape and when he was selected in the middle of that day 3 portion.
You jotted down a few notes on Twitter that I wanted to get at, and one of them was about Goldston. Now, Osa sat out apparently with was it a hip or a quad? I think it was a quad contusion. And Chauncey Goldston apparently got some work inside, and this is what you had to say about it. He stuck out to me both with his build, he's much bigger, and his speed. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, and I actually have an article coming out today on DallasCowboys.com that you can check out that kind of dives deeper into that. I had a great conversation with him after practice, and I it was funny because we showed up and we sat down. We were right beside the defensive linemen, specifically the edge rushers, for the first portion of individual drills. And I looked up and I was like, who is 99? And of course, he wore 59 last year. I was like, who is 99? And this is the first time that I've seen him in that number. I looked down at my little roster card, and I was like, there's no way that's Chauncey Goldston. This is a typo. I mean, he looks massive, like big in a good way. I mean, his arms are bigger, his legs are wider, and he's got more on the core side of things. Like, he looks big. And so watching him, I was like, okay, so he looks big. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? And then when they were in drills and you were looking for get off and you're looking for quickness and the bend and the ability to kind of move, he was one that still was as quick as the other guys. I mean, he didn't lose a step in terms of his size. So initially my note on my notepad, I wrote, Chauncey Goldston looks big, and I capitalized big and underlined it because I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And then after that, I said, and he has the same speed. So the fact that he didn't have any kind of drop-off from a speed standpoint, but his size was there, was impressive. So I went up to him after. I was like, hey, how much have you gained this offseason? He said 20 pounds.
Wow.
So he was like, I've put on 20 pounds. And I was like, how did you do that? And he's like, I hired a chef. I've got my body right. We've really taken a step to moving forward with me in a full off season. I was like, that is awesome. And he's anticipating that he would play a little bit more of the 3 technique, maybe a little bit more of a 5 technique. And he played 2 snaps last year as a nose tackle. I don't know if he's going to do any more of that specifically, but I would expect maybe more of a versatile role for him, bouncing along that defensive line. He may take more snaps as an interior defensive lineman than he would as an edge rusher. He still worked with both yesterday, so it's not like it's a completely full-time switch, but it's trending that direction. They want him to be versatile, and right now he's showing off that versatility in the early parts of OTAs.
I wonder if this is a direct connection with Dan Quinn, bringing in that kind of more versatile front 7 type of look. I mean, he did it last year, bringing in guys this year. He's kind of came with that same mantra. But my face when you said he put on 20 pounds, I wish you could have seen it. That's nuts.
Somebody else that I was talking to yesterday was like, yeah, maybe 15 today, and then like at the moment, and then it'll be 5 more after lunch. Like, I mean, there's a little bit of disconnect on whether or not it was a complete 20, but that's what he said, and I probably had the same face that you did. I can't see you in front of me, but I anticipated very similar to what I had whenever he said that to me initially.
Interesting nugget, man. Interesting nugget. You also talked about Dak Prescott as well. You said that he looked, was it sharp, I believe was the word. He finally gets a chance to focus right on football things. The health he's healthy. He's not worried about rehabbing as much. And I think he's at that stage of his career where those small tweaks and those details are what he's looking to improve upon. From an early look, I get it's OTAs, but how's he moving out there? How's he throwing out there? You kind of take on Dak Prescott.
Well, the thing that I was looking for specifically was the zip that he put on the balls. Like when he was putting some velocity behind his throws again, because toward the back half of the season and even early on last year when we were in training camp and he was dealing with the shoulder injury and he didn't necessarily have a whole lot of time to throw the football, it died off at the end. He didn't necessarily complete his throws, and that kind of transitioned into the regular season. And yeah, he had the high numbers through the first 6 weeks of the year, but especially when he got back down to the bottom part of the regular season, I wanted to see more on his throws. And he came out, and it's back in terms of the throws and the tip, what he had. I mean, the ball explodes out of his hand. He puts it where he wants it to go. He could run down the field and hand it to a guy better. He really was sharp initially. He had some plays throughout the team period where maybe he overthrew a guy or the timing was off. That's all going to come into play. It's OTAs. There was one play in team period where it was like a 2-minute drill or it was like a last second, and the offense needed a touchdown, basically a Hail Mary scenario. And, I mean, he threw it from the 64 yards out mark. So I guess what would that be, the 40 the 44, I guess, from the opposite side. No, it'd be even further than that.
They said there would be no math, Kyle. There would be no math.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm a reporter. Come on. But he threw it nearly 60 yards in the air, and he had some air on it too. So he's got an opportunity to come out and reestablish the arm strength against defenses, because I think last year defenses dared him to throw the ball deep. They dared him to try and beat them downfield because they loaded the box and they brought down the extra defender, and they slowed down the run, but that didn't necessarily mean that Dak Prescott was going to beat them from throwing the football either. And so I think this is a way that he could challenge those defenses if he could get the deep ball going again. And it looked like yesterday he could certainly do so.
I love to hear that, Kyle. I do. But from what seems like the second or third year now in a row for Dak, he's not going to have his top 1 or 2 guys. And in this case, I think it was 3 of the 4, Gallup, Tolbert, Washington, all out. It was an opportunity for one of these wide receivers to step up. Who got the next up reps, and did anybody even really catch your eyes in doing so?
Yeah, and honestly, this wide receiver room is so deep, and not necessarily with talent, but with bodies and these rookies. It actually gives an opportunity for some of these younger, undrafted guys, unproven guys, to step up and see who can stand out. And I thought a couple guys, one was Simi Fehoko from last year's draft pick, and a guy who never really got to see playing time and was really an afterthought on this roster throughout last season. I thought he finally got legitimate reps with the quarterbacks. And Dak Prescott involved, but also Will Grier, Cooper Rush in there too. And I thought Fehoko looked good. He looked quicker. Not necessarily like a massive step forward in terms of the quickness, but his routes are sharper. His footwork looks crisper. I mean, he has had a visible improvement. You can see that in the early parts of training camp. And, I mean, in terms of the way that he navigated around the red zone yesterday, was something that I had written down as an improvement for sure. Additionally to that, I thought Jakari Robinson out of Wake Forest, undrafted free agent from last year, was impressive. And then TJ Vasher, who was a 2021 undrafted free agent, injured last year, never really got a chance to go. He's just like a walking highlight reel. He made one grab yesterday on Anthony Brown on the goal line where Dak threw it in a tight window and Vasher went and got it. And he was in the end zone for a touchdown. He's got a little personality to him too, which I like. He started grittying after the play. It was because he was an undrafted guy who was injured all of last year. Turned around and guess what? He made a play on a starter. He's gonna dance a little bit. So a couple of those receivers getting some valuable reps with Dak and Greer and Cooper Rush and Ben DiNucci of getting into the rotation and getting to play these guys or with these guys throughout OTAs.
Man, you brought up Vasher, and I got excited because I think he could be a weapon, right? Like, he may not be the most crisp route-running guy. He's not the fastest or whatever, but you can't teach 6'6", and he probably can jump 14 feet. So, you could use that in the red zone.
Yeah, his catch radius is the best on the team by far. I mean, he 100% has so much room that he could grow from a fundamental standpoint, but that's something that maybe he was able to kind of focus in on during a quote-unquote redshirt year because he was hurt and because he had time to kind of to talk with these coaches and develop. If he can bring the same sort of speed and the same sort of athleticism that you would anticipate from him, at least from a pass catcher standpoint, I don't see why he couldn't fill a back end of the depth chart role, maybe like a Malik Turner role where he's not necessarily needed a ton of the time. Maybe you could put him on special teams and play out there if he's good at that. I still haven't really gotten a chance to see that to a certain extent. So, hey, if he excels at that, he may be able to find the back end of the depth chart role because I'm with you. I really want to see him shine because I was higher on him. I thought he would have been drafted last year, but the fact that he was signed was really exciting. And then, hey, he's got an opportunity to make it work with that size, that frame, and that athleticism all together.
In closing here, Kyle, I don't want to keep you too long, man. I appreciate this. It's Kyle Youmans, Cowboys TV host and draft analyst. How's our young Lion doing, man? How's he looking out there? Is he working with the DEs? He's working with the linebackers, or he's kind of everywhere like he usually is?
You said Ryan?
Our young Lion, a.k.a. Micah Parsons.
Oh, Lion. I thought you said Ryan. I was racking my brain for who was named Ryan on the defense.
Ryan Nall, but I don't want to talk about him.
Yeah, he's on the offense, though, so it's a little different. Yeah, but no, man, he looks where you want him to be. I mean, that's the biggest thing is again, there's no pads, so it's tough to really get a feel on the physicality that these guys are showing. But he was in the right place at the right time, and his athleticism's still there. He hasn't necessarily changed the body type a ton, and he was working significantly with the linebackers with a couple of blitzes up the middle too. So, I mean, in terms of Micah Parsons and what he could bring, I think he's still going to be right where you need him to be. And the fact of the matter is you didn't really want him to change a whole lot. You didn't want him to add weight. You didn't want him to slim down or do any of the sort. He looks exactly like he did last year, which is perfect. And then let's use that again and let's find a way for him to be that Lion on the backside of the defense and bring some versatility to that front seven for Dan Quinn.
What I took away from that is he was working significantly at the linebacker spot yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of the role that he played last year.
Okay.
He wasn't hand in the ground edge rusher
Gotcha.
just yet. He was at the second level. He was alongside Leighton Vander Esch, kind of what you anticipate from those linebackers, but he was back there for the majority of the time.
Gotcha. Hey, listen, Kyle, this has been fantastic. You dropped a ton of nuggets for us, man. And as always, I truly appreciate you coming on here and doing this for us, good brother.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Talk to you soon.
All right, man. Enjoy the rest of your day.